All right, we are live and we are going to start in under 30 seconds, 12 p.m., top of the hour. We are going to get this thing started. All right, so if it is you are joining in, let me just, all right, if you are joining in, we are about to start. All right, so let me know if you can hear me on LinkedIn, and let me know if you can hear me on Facebook, all right? Because we're going live on both platforms. All right, I have this highly requested topic. Now, I know not everyone may be available to join in at this time. So if it is you are watching the replay, put hashtag replay in the comment box. All right, but just give me a heads up to let me know if you are hearing me well, seeing me well, before we get this thing started. All right. So just checking the comments. All right. All right. Nice. So let's begin. All right. So I want to welcome everyone who is joining in on this session, be it live or if it is you are watching the replay. Thank you so much for joining in. Today, we are going to be dealing with understanding the 5 living generations in your workplace, which is the day one of this 2-day live event entitled Mastering Multigenerational Motivation. And this topic is such a critical topic. All right. Now, the thing is, I get questions about this all the time from managers, executives, CEOs. How do we engage? How do we motivate persons who are not from our generation? All right. And it can go both ways. You may find sometimes as an executive, you may be you may have to manage or don't like the word in terms of manage, but lead or motivate people who are from a younger generation than you. Or you may find yourself with responsibility for a unit, a function, an organization where you have to lead and motivate people who are older than you are. And both times they create issues. All right, both times they create issues. And so we want to talk about this. We want to talk about this. And this is not an issue only in the work environment. And in the work environment, it is creating significant challenges and significant fallout. And we're going to talk about some of that in a bit. But also, you're going to find any environment where there are different generations, there are issues. It can be in the home, all right? You can find at school challenges. You're going to find also, and I'm going to say in school, not just elementary or primary schools, but you're also going to find in adult learning in university or college, you're finding these challenges. In religious organizations, there are challenges when you listen to persons trying to lead their organizations into the future. They realize that the generations that they have to deal with now are very, very different from the generation that they grew up in. Political organizations are struggling also, trying to figure out how to connect with the younger ones, and even the younger persons trying to understand and trying to figure out how to get the older persons to hear them and to be on board. So across the spectrum, in various organizations, be it in the workplace, in business, school, home, or any other civil organization, you're going to find there are issues where generations collide. The list goes on and on and on and on. And because I've had the opportunity to function in the private sector, public sector, NGO sector, even with non-profit religious organizations, I have seen it time and time again. And sometimes we think what we face may only be happening in our organization or in our industry or in our sphere. But I want to tell you, no, you're not alone. It's happening everywhere across the board because people are people. All right, people are people. So let that pass. Let that cause you to exhale a little bit. You are not alone in facing this particular challenge. Your organization is not alone in facing this particular challenge. And so you find a C-suite, as executives, as CEOs, we really have to get on top of managing this. Now, let's talk a little bit about why this is a challenge. All right. Now, when you have different generations, and we have 5 generations operating in the workplace right now, 5 living generations. Now, really, it's about 7 living generations on the earth right now, but you're going to find about 5 of them in the workplace. And it's causing, let me talk first about the levels of stress that executives and organizational leaders experience as a result of this. What you're going to find at a personal level is that leaders struggle to get the support of their team. They may find that team members don't support them. If it is their older manager or older executive, they sometimes believe that persons are treating them as if they're a dinosaur, no longer relevant, or even obsolete when they hold a massive trump, which is experience, right? And know-how. And it's very difficult to beat experience. Or you may find if it is the team leader or the executive is younger than their team members, they may not get the kind of respect that they may be looking for from their team members. And when that happens, regardless of which situation you find yourself in, trust is eroded. Now, trust is essential for effective leadership. You cannot lead without trust. You can manage without trust. You cannot lead effectively without trust. When leaders do not trust their teams, or when teams do not trust their managers or their leaders, there is a frustration that is created. Many executives end up overworked because they have to do many things themselves, micromanage, look over things that they really shouldn't have to look over. And that leads to even greater frustration because once there is overwork, once there's an overload of work, once there's frustration, you're also going to find burnout will set in. Once burnout sets in, it starts to bleed over into other areas of your life. All right? I have heard many leaders say there is an opportunity in front of them, but they tell themselves, I don't want that opportunity because to take that opportunity will cost me more. I'd have to give up more of my time. I already work all these hours. I already work all these days. I don't want to work anymore. And so they give up on opportunities for promotion, increases, and greater opportunities. But the truth is, you may be looking at someone who is in the position that you now have to occupy and realize that they are overworked, they are overburdened, they are burnt out, and you don't want to be like that. But the truth is, many times persons do not have the strategies required to really treat with those issues. So you don't have to have a difficult experience. You can actually have a fantastic experience and capitalize on every opportunity that comes your way. All right? And even worse, what may happen at times is that the executive, the leader, the manager, the team lead could be viewed as not having the requisite skills needed to get their team on board, to drive success. In fact, I had one person, a very experienced senior manager, come to me one time, very concerned, requesting coaching because her CEO threatened to put her on a performance improvement plan, a PIP, the dreaded PIP. All right, because she was struggling to get her younger team members to work harmoniously with her. Many of them complained to HR. Some were brought to tears by her style. Others resigned or requested transfers out of her department. As far as she was concerned, they were too touchy, too sensitive, that they were lazy, they didn't want to put in the work. And the truth is, before she got into that position, she was always seen as very effective and a very productive team leader. All of a sudden now, when she's placed in an environment where the generation that she has to lead is very different from her, now her performance is being questioned. It is a real issue. Another major issue that team leaders, executives, and CEOs may face, beside at the personal level or their individual career level, the organization experience issues as well. There is significant loss of productivity when persons are in HR complaining, or when it is they experiencing significant emotional damage, persons brought to tears, considering resigning, considering transfers, significant loss of productivity, and loss of great talent. And the loss of great talent is extremely costly for an organization. I don't think organizational leaders realize how costly it is to lose great talent. In the book Good to Great, written by Jim Collins, 92% of the organizations that made the leap from good to great did it with homegrown internal leaders. Only 8% of them made the leap without that, with external persons. And so to increase the chances of your organization's success, you should home grow your leaders. And just the loss of that person, a person who is not in management, it costs an organization 50% of their annual salary. 50%. And when it comes to a manager or a person who is in an executive position, it can cost the organization as much as 150% of their annual salary. That is huge. Companies are hemorrhaging because of the loss of talent, great talent that left the organization because we couldn't find a way to work harmoniously with them. All right? We don't want that to be your story, and we don't want that to be your organization's positions, because organizations literally take a hit in their bottom line simply because they cannot get the right people on board. All right? And the thing is, if it is you are looking at succession planning and looking at the future of your organization, and every great leader doesn't only look at their own tenure, every great leader looks beyond their tenure. And if you're looking beyond your tenure, you must look at the younger generations. You must look at generations who came after you. You must. And so you have to find a way to engage them, develop them, motivate them, and then let them loose to create great things in your organization. Companies who cannot successfully keep their best talent is doomed to fail, and at best will end up mediocre. All right? So if it is your organization has to be great, it must find a way to get the generations after you on board. Yeah? All right. So I'm not going to be long today, so I want to start to jump into the meat of it. All right. So you want to grab a pen and paper as I start to give some further details. So one of the major reasons for this significant dissonance between and among generations in the workplace, it is because today the generations that make up the workforce are wildly different from each other. Wildly different. The veterans in the workplace, right? Those 44 years and older, 44 years of age and older, they are quite similar in certain aspects. All right. And their approach to the success of the organization and even to their own success is quite similar versus those that are younger than this. All right. And I'm going to go into more details very soon. The last two generations in the workplace, they hold a very different view from the older generations in the workplace. And the truth is, the matter will get worse and worse as time goes on. So it is incumbent upon us as organizational leaders, C-suite executives, the one who sets the tone at the top, even boards of directors, one who sets policy, all right, and the executive that sets strategy. It is critical that a major component of your strategy for the future includes understanding and integrating these younger generations. All right? Throwing money at them doesn't solve the problem. Making demands of them doesn't solve the problem. Threats and other forms of coercion doesn't work, doesn't solve the problem. All right? And the thing is, the secondary reason for this struggle, besides them being widely different, is that many organizational leaders inadvertently, unconsciously seek to motivate people the way they are motivated. It's natural, it's human nature, especially if you're well intended. You try to do to others as you would have people do to you. And while motivation may be a key, how they are motivated is going to be very, very different. And this is a common reflex error of many leaders. You try to motivate another person based on what motivates you. You try to give them what it is you wanted at that time. And the thing is, their mindsets are very, very different. And so their needs are very, very different. We're going to talk more about this in tomorrow, because tomorrow we are going to talk about how to motivate each generation. But today I want us to understand them. It's very difficult for us to motivate anybody if it is we don't understand them. And I want to say this. So while get your pen and paper ready, a major key to effective leadership is knowing who you're attempting to lead. I'll say it again. A major key to effective leadership is knowing who you are attempting to lead. If you do not know, or you simply assume to know who you are leading because you were once in their shoes, you put yourself on your team at a significant disadvantage. Significant disadvantage. All right? You, I, them, whomever else, whoever them may be in your context, they grew up during a very specific period of time, being groomed by a very specific generation at home and in the workplace, hearing a very specific message or specific group of messages that shaped how they see life, shaped how I see life, shaped how you see life, what inspires us, what we should aspire to be, and how do we believe we can get there. All right? And these things are deep rooted. And so it is critical, critical that we understand this. So even if it is you don't attend tomorrow, or we never have the opportunity to work together, at least this understanding will help to put a lot of things in perspective for you and will be able to help you in shaping your own strategy in dealing with your team. All right? So let's jump in. All right. If it is you are enjoying this session so far, just respond, thumbs up, all right, a heart. Let me know that you're following me, you're getting me, you understand what I'm saying. Everything is making sense. All right. That is very, very critical. Everything is making sense. And anyone who has followed me, been a part of any of my programs, know that I come from a very practical space. So even though all that I teach is rooted in science and rooted in experience, all right, a lot of trial and error, it's battle tested in the workplace. It's important that you understand what is being shared, because when you understand it, you can take it and implement it. All right, you can take it and implement it. Great. Thank you so much for that feedback. Lovely. Seeing it coming in. Nice. I appreciate that. All right. So we're going to jump in. We're going to talk about these 5 living generations in the workplace today. As I said, there's 7 living generations on the earth right now. The youngest and the oldest, they are not in the workplace right now. But I will go through each of these generations because you can Google these things. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you about each of these generations through the eyes of a leader. So if it is you find yourself having to lead anyone or motivate anyone or interact or connect or influence anyone from any of these generations, I want you to take these things into consideration. It will help you. You will realize that it's not just that they don't want to support you or they don't trust you. You will come to realize that it is simply because of who they are and what they hold dear to them. You want to work with the psychology of the generation. You always want to work with human nature. You never want to work against it because you will lose. All right. So let's jump in. First generation we're going to talk about the youngest generation in the workplace. Not the youngest generation alive, but the youngest generation in the workplace right now is Generation Z, or Gen Z as they call them. All right. They are from ages 11 to 26. All right. So you're going to find in the workplace, depending on which country you operate from, 16 years up, can be in the workplace. So all of those persons are Gen Z. The oldest Gen Z in the workplace right now is 26 years old. They are born between 1997 and 2012. They're sometimes referred to as the side hustle generation. All right, because they generally believe or even have a side hustle while they work a full-time job. This generation grew up hearing about multiple streams of income, multiple streams of income. And COVID came and legitimized their belief because many people, when COVID hit, they lost their main singular job. And for many of these Gen Zs, it was their side hustle that kept them going and caused them to still have a stream of income when some other generations did not have that side hustle and so really was out of income. The other thing that they prioritize is freedom of time and freedom of movement. This stationary space of working, they love taking a picture, right? Having to go on the beach and working from the beach. That is fantastic. That is so inspirational to a Gen Z, all right? Or you might be sitting somewhere by a pool, sipping some lovely drink and putting in the work, all right? This impacts how they see older generations at times. All right. They may see the older generation, sometimes their parents, their grandparents, aunts, uncles, or even their bosses. All right. Work very, very hard. And when it comes time for retirement, they just have a house or a car. They can't go on a vacation to Bora Bora or to Dubai if it is they like. That is not the dream retirement for the Gen Z at all. In fact, many of them want to retire early, 50, 40. My son is a Gen Z. He's hoping to retire at 30. All right? The child is 18. So he wants to put in 12 good years of work and retire at 30. All right? Now, the thing is, here's the kicker. I am not a Gen Z. So I even chuckled. I chuckled at the thought. Because in my mind, that can't work. And this is what we do in the workplace. We don't understand that our intrinsic beliefs ooze out of us. We may think we're not doing anything. We may think we're not communicating. We may even tell ourselves we didn't do anything. But our facial expressions, or little scoffs, or little chuckles, or little eye rolls, or body language communicates what our belief may be, which may be very different from theirs. And it may even be offensive, and you don't realize you're offending them because our own inherent beliefs clash with their inherent beliefs. So, in sharing this information, I'm helping you to understand where your pitfalls may be as a leader. Because once you don't understand the mindset, you run the risk of offense. All right? So the other thing is that they were born with technology as advanced as it is right now. All right. They are very comfortable with the devices and can even appear to be dependent on the devices. They're the ones with the little earbuds in their ears. All right. Bumping their heads as they work. And another generation may think, oh my God, you're so distracted. But the thing is, they're not distracted by the devices because they grew with the devices. The older generations, as you would see when I go along, they had to be introduced to these devices. This generation, from the time they were very, very young, under a year, they were unlocking phones and treating with certain things that we had to learn as an older generation. So it's almost like they came with an inherent understanding somehow. So when I hear grandparents speak of their grandchildren as, saying, I had to, give the child to show me how to do this on my phone. Yeah, they will know how to do it. And so when you think it might be a distraction for them, it's not. It's so second nature. It's just that it irks you to see them with earbuds in their ears, for example. But for them, it's a comfort. For them, it helps them to focus. So you want to be very, very careful how you see these things. They have a shorter attention span, not because they are lazy or crazy or just, some people make us eccentric or all the different terms we use for them. They have a shorter attention span because they grew up at a time where they grew up in a world of media. And it's a very busy, active world of media. So their attention span from very young was, I don't want to say challenged, but they had a lot coming at them very, very quickly from a very young age. So they have the capacity to digest media very, very quickly and get what they need out of it and move on. And so when you may take time to digest and to ponder, because again, you had to be introduced. I had to be introduced. They didn't. It was part and parcel of their growing. All right. So they have a short attention span. So you need to get to the point. You need to use various media that they are accustomed with to communicate with them. They like to get things almost immediately, if not immediately. All right. And this is largely this is largely as a result of growing up in a digital world where everything is immediate. All right. So delayed gratification sometimes can be a challenge for them. But you're going to see, pay attention. Pay attention to how the generation after them, Generation Alpha, will be impacted by AI. We are now being introduced to AI. They, Gen Z, are being introduced to AI. But the Alpha generation is being born with AI. Those are 10 years and younger. So if you have children in this age group, keep your eye on it. They may not be your team members, but they may be your children or your grandchildren. All right? And the thing is, the answer is not to keep them away from it. And I know some parents attempted to do that with Gen Zs. You cannot keep them away from the technology because not before long, AI will be introduced into education and other key areas of life that you will not be able to avoid. All right. So you want to become accustomed with it. But this is the Gen Z. This is this grouping. And as I'm speaking, you can identify, you might be able to connect with it with nieces, nephews, children, grandchildren, team members. You can picture them as I'm speaking. But it's important to understand that what you see, it's not just them being miserable or lazy or entitled or own way. It is a very real thing based on how they grew. You want to understand it, you want to respect it, and you want to work with it. All right? Let's jump to the next generation because I don't want to keep you here long. Generation Y, the millennials. All right. Now, often when people hear the term millennial, they often think of teenagers or people in their early 20s, but those are not millennials. The millennials are those aged 27 to 42. All right, that is the millennial group. The younger group is the Generation Z, the Gen Z. Millennials were born between 1996 and 1981. Now, they are very comfortable with digital technology. However, many of them had to be migrated to digital technology because for the earlier portions of their lives, they grew up in analog. All right. So when my son got a cell phone when he was in primary school, because I'm concerned, as a parent, if I'll get to reach him and all these different things, especially when he had all these extracurricular activities. I grew to my adulthood. I only had a cell phone when I became an adult and was working and bought it for myself. Anybody else like that in the house? Right? I only had a cell phone as an adult, and I had to buy it for myself from the money I was working for. My son, who is a Gen Z, I bought it for him. So he's still not working. He's still in school at 18, and he has had several cell phones since then. It's so interesting, right? So the millennials, we had this group had to be introduced to digital technology as it is, but they're still very comfortable with it. This generation was pushed to level up on their education compared to that of their parents. All right, so education formed a big part of the messaging for Generation Y, the millennials. They were pushed to grow. This is the generation that saw during their work life the minimum requirements for jobs, many professional jobs, move from A levels or a high school graduation to a bachelor's degree to now a master's degree. This was the generation that saw all of that shift. So they always had to find themselves leveling up, leveling up. And if you see many generation Y, now Gen Ys now or millennials now, they're studying many of them, even up to now, even the older ones who might be the later 30s, early 40s, because it's up to 42, still studying, still doing a master's, doing a second master's, because they grew up in a generation where they were pushed for education, level up your education. And they had to level up to be relevant to their workplace. All right? Because the goalposts keep shifting on them in terms of education. So they are big on growth. They're big on courses, big on training. All right? Big on shifting what's up here. Because that is what they had to do to survive and to be successful in their sphere during their time. All right? The big thing is though, when this generation entered the workforce, and that's where the millennial name came from. When this well, was one of the reasons. When this generation entered the workforce, they were very often labeled as being lazy and entitled. And that is why there is a quote unquote stigma of millennials. So some older generations could say millennials with a scoff or skull. All right, the millennials. And for them, it means all of those young people, right? It was this generation that got that stigma, the Gen Y, the millennials. All right, that even as I said, when persons hear the term millennial, they think teenagers or miserable 20-something-year-olds. All right, it was because this generation got that hit, right? They got the reputation of being lazy and entitled. And while, I guess for some it may be so, the truth is they just had a very different perspective on life. They had a very different perspective on success. And tomorrow we're going to delve into that, because when it comes to motivating them, you need to understand that perspective. All right? Let's move on down. The next generation is Generation X or Gen X, right? The Gen Xers. All right, they are from age 43 to 58 years old. They were born between 1965 and 1980. This is a generation that grew up with the mass message of buy your home, buy your car, stabilize yourself, stabilize your family. All right? And so for them, job security was big, big. That was a big thing. All right? Now, this generation is not unfamiliar to hard work, with hard work. This generation worked very hard and was known for their grit. All right, they will work very, very hard. In fact, it was this generation that normalized and even glorified being a workaholic. So if you're a Gen X, ouch. All right, all right. Normalize and even glorify being a workaholic, working long hours, working to get it done. Many organizations were built and rebuilt on the backs of the Gen X. They're a tough generation. All right, especially after World War II, which ended only 20 years before they were born. This was the generation that pulled it through. All right, and they were raised by parents who lived through the war, and that does something to a person. And so imagine these young, impressionable children coming up under these adults who would have been through the war And imagine being on the receiving end of that and the impact of it. And that is why Gen Xers are so tough. They're mentally tough, very gritty, roll up their sleeves, get it done. All right? This is a generation not afraid of hard work. As I said, they normalize and even glorified this excessive work. And so when these other generations, younger generations, come in to talk at very different perspective, a different tune, they're not having it. They view them as just being lazy. But it's not laziness, it's a different perspective. There's more than one way to skin a cat. But for the Gen X, it's grit, it's hard work, roll up your sleeves and get it done. Pay your price. All right? Let's go to the next generation, the baby boomers. All right, I hope I'm not going too fast, but I just want to make sure I get everything in so you get the information that you need. So, baby boomers, their age is 59 to 77 years old. They were born between 1946 to 1964. They got this name because of the large number of babies that were being born after the war. All right. Many believed the men who survived the war came back home and just started a baby boom, right? A lot of babies, right, after they came back from the war. And it is said in the US that during the lifetime of baby boomers, the number of households that had TVs went from just being a handful to 90% of households having TVs across the country. This generation focused heavily on improving the quality of their lives after having been through a war. All right. A lot of damage was done. And so they had to spend time repairing that damage personally and also in their communities and in their countries at large. And so this generation grew up with parents who participated who were directly impacted by the war. As a result, they are very, very big on giving and receiving instructions, heavy on instructions. You're told what to do. You go and you do it. You don't ask too many questions. You speak when you're spoken to. You answer when you're called. These are some sayings that are reminiscent of this generation. Now, this generation is also very much involved in politics from a very young age and continued in politics for quite a long time. In fact, many of the top politicians up to today are baby boomers, this generation. All right, I want you to pay attention to that and pay attention to their thinking, pay attention to how they grew up, pay attention to the heavy instructional tone, pay attention to how the kind of parents they were grown by and what impact it will have upon them and how they see success and how they see work and certainly how they see people and how they see leadership. Now, this generation would be in pre-retirement or retirement. All right, so if you're looking in your organization, you're going to see that. The final generation we're going to talk about today is the silent generation. All right, the silent generation. They are from ages 78 to 98. They were born between 1925 and 1945. All right, in fact, my deceased grandmother, she was born 1925. All right. And in the workplace, this generation is mainly found in family run businesses, politics, and religion. All right, religious organizations, political organizations, and family run businesses. It's almost like these areas don't really have retirement ages, it would appear. All right. Now, they got their name because they were viewed as a very silent and conforming group of young people. All right, they barely spoke out on issues. All right, they're loyalists by nature, not very technologically advanced, and they hold respect as a revered trait. Respect is non negotiable. It doesn't matter what was done to you, it doesn't matter what was said to you, it doesn't even matter if you are respected. When it comes to them, you better give respect. All right, it's a non negotiable for them, it's a zero tolerance. So, unless you operate within a family business, politics, or religion, you will not necessarily encounter this generation very often. However, they may be your parents, or grandparents, you still need to take closer note. If it is you have a family run business, or you operate in politics or in a religious space, then you can probably reach out to me directly. I can give you more information about this generation. Or if you are from this generation, you have to lead other persons, I can give you more. But it's so important to take note because you may find them. And because they're in politics, you're going to hear them because they might be in national leadership in your country. All right, they may be the ones that may be your prime ministers and your presidents and the ones who are the members of parliament and all of these things. So you want to take note. You want to take note why they say what they say, why they look at things the way they do. It is because they came from a particular generation. Family run business, they, as far as they're concerned, some things are battle tested. All right. And for you to just come and challenge it and to throw it out and to want to put in all of this technology, they view it as disrespect. The way you handle the transition is big for them. And you're going to get a lot of pushback because of how you may go about it. To you, it may not be disrespect, but to them, it can very easily be. All right. So you want to be very careful with how you handle this generation. And if you are from this generation, I know you may view the other generations as being just disrespectful. If you ask someone from the silent generation how they view a Gen Z, one of the first things they would say is disrespectful. All right. And there is a reason for that. I'm explaining it. All right. So what I will do tomorrow is I will go into a lot more detail now that we kind of understand each of these generations. This was a quick and dirty because it's a live. I don't want to be here longer than 45 minutes for you to really get a hold of who you are dealing with and why they function the way they function. But what we're going to delve into tomorrow is how to work with how they function, to motivate them, to engage them, to influence them, to lead them effectively, and some of the common pitfalls that organizations and executives make and how to remedy them. All right. Now, one of the last things I want to mention is, listen, I get this question all the time. All right. I get this question all the time. How do we engage the younger persons in our organizations? Or if it is, I do some coaching or teaching on intergenerational issues, I always have this concern that they almost have to relegate the generations that they're not from, or they would resign themselves. That it's going to be a tough struggle, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And when I go into in depth with this with clients, it's always a hit because so many problems they thought they had just melts away. So what I'm going to do, because I'm getting, when I posted about this event, I got a lot of persons inboxing me saying, this is so needed. I am making sure I attend because I'm experiencing this right now. Yeah, it's a big issue around the world. It's a big issue in many organizations. It's a big issue in family units. So what I'm going to do is on Thursday, so we're going to have the live today and Wednesday. On Thursday, I decided to do a behind the scenes private Zoom session. All right, it's not going to be via this platform. It's going to be via Zoom. It's absolutely free. I'm just going to do one more day, but I'm going to pull back the curtains a little bit more. And I would allow you to see how I actually build the strategy when I'm dealing with multiple generations in a particular place. All right, it's the ultimate guide to intergenerational leadership, which goes beyond the motivation. So it's going to be just for about an hour, not more than an hour, 12 to 1 Atlantic Standard Time or Eastern Standard Time, depending on where you live. And so look out for the link to the link for registration. It's going to be by Zoom. Once you put in your information, you're going to get the Zoom link. It's going to be posted later on today. But I want you to have the opportunity to see me do it live in person, to work through the details so that you can have the opportunity to build your own strategy for your team or your organization. And what I'm going to do is, if you would like me to walk through a strategy with you live or to get live advice on how to treat with an issue that you may be facing where you have multiple generations in your workplace, then we have a little Google form. It's not very long, where you can put in some key information for us. and we might be able to select you. So it doesn't mean that I will select everybody who fills out the Google form. We're going to try to see if we get as many in as possible, but we have to manage the time. So if it is you're not selected, please know it was not intentional. All right. So I would either drop it in the chat now or ask one of my team members who is on to drop the link for the laser strategy application form in the chat. Just put in your information, and I'll say this. Because I work with very senior executives, many times their identities are connected to their organization's brands. And so I do not share their identities. So even when I put out testimonials, and that's why I don't post testimonials very often, even though I need to do it more, is because I have to keep my client's identity protected. All right. They have to give permission, or they have to choose to do it for themselves just because of where they function, right? And the possible impact on their organization and the organization's brand. And so if it is you want to participate and you may be concerned about that, we can, and you will see it in the form, the option is there. We can give you a code name to enter the session, so you don't enter with your actual name. You can leave your camera off. You don't mention your company's name or any other major identifiable information. But you are just on to get the information for to see me and for me to help you build your strategy so that you can solve those issues in your department and get on with the business of success. All right. And that's one of the major reasons why I decided to do Zoom and not necessarily another live. All right. So we are going to be in the room. Just ask for the link. But what we will be doing, we'll be protecting our clients' privacy when they come in, especially those who will want to participate in this laser strategy opportunity. All right. So just to close out, guys, I mean, put it in the chat as I'm winding down. If you enjoyed this session, if it is you think it was useful to you. But we spoke about the Gen Zs, we spoke about the Gen Y, we spoke about the Gen X, we spoke about baby boomers, as well as the silent generation in the context of their main characteristics that you need to be aware of as a leader. I didn't talk about every single thing about the generations, but what is necessary for you as a leader. And tomorrow, as I said, I will show on exactly how to motivate each of these generations. All right? So set your alarm for 12 p.m. We're going to be meeting here again tomorrow. And again, if you want to be part of that private Zoom session on Thursday, look out for the registration link. And even more, if it is you want to be part, if you want to have the opportunity to have that laser strategy done on the spot with you and really get the answer that you need, then fill out the Google form and fill it out as soon as possible, because we are going to do it first come, first serve. And when we have reached the max number of people we can take and do live on the session, we will cut it off there. All right. Yeah. So I want you, all right, to set your alarm for tomorrow. Number one, fill out the Google form if it is you want to access that opportunity to see me work through a strategy live. All right. And also look out for the link. We're not going to post it here on this live. We'll probably do an event with it. So look out for it on LinkedIn and Facebook. Look out for the registration link. Just fill it out. It's just a name and email address. You'll get the link for the session. You'll be in on Thursday. But be sure to fill out this Google form if it is you want to have the opportunity for me to work through your strategy live. And it can be any issue. It could be any issue. You could be leading a team that is, you think that one person in there is stressful because they're older than you or younger than you, or it could be an entire team is very difficult, or you may have a senior or board member that you have to work with, but because their generations are so different, you think there is the issue, or you may be the CEO or head of organization, and you see this as a real issue in your organization and you need advice on how to work this through. Then fill out the form. I'll help you treat with those issues. All right. Thank you so much for joining on. All right. I'm signing off now, and I'll see you tomorrow, 12 p.m., right back here. All right. Take care.